They still call me the Penguin.
Okay, we have returned to We'll See About That, and our special guest, Merritt Lutz, will be receiving a beautiful fruit gift basket courtesy of our friends at Melissa's Produce. Melissa's is a proud partner of We'll See About That. Be sure to use my VIP code RONSAY when checking out at melissas.com. Today we have a special guest who has a very distinguished career in finances and goes back a long way. He's also had, I would say, a touch with music, which is a love of his, charity raising, fundraiser, you name it. Merritt, welcome to the show. I just want to give you, our listening audience and viewing audience, just a current update. You are the Chief Executive Officer, CEO at FinRisk Technologies. That's your company. Tell me how you got started in that. Where did that come from?
Well, that's a long story, but I was when I went to school, I went to Michigan State, and I majored in communication arts, which has nothing to do with finance. And then I got my master's degree in social science, which is basically not finance either. That's the combination of history and psychology and sociology. I did those things because I liked them. You know, I mean, there wasn't anything magic. I didn't have my foot on the pedal looking at the future, that's for sure. And so I got into it because when I got out of school, I jumped to computers, and it was just taken off at that time. It was in the '60s, and there were a few mainframes out there, but that was about it. But they were recruiting like crazy. So, and they were paying top buck, and I said I didn't know anything about computers, and it was RCA actually. RCA used to make mainframes, for all of you that are as old as I am and might remember that, and RCA and Honeywell and of course IBM and NCR and all these guys made computers, the big ones. So the RCA said to me, "Don't worry about it. We'll teach you that stuff." You know, I thought, I think I'm pretty unteachable in something like computers. And I said, okay, if you want to do that, I'll give it a shot. So they take you and they put you in a boot camp, and it's really tough. And then they put you right in the field, and you're competing with these other companies, and you're doing real important programming and a bunch of stuff and that you aren't qualified to do, but you better learn fast. And so, but I was never very good at it, you know. And so they finally said to me, they being the management at RCA, you know, we think you ought to do something different. And I thought he was going to say, go to another company, but he didn't. He said, I think you ought to sell these things. And I thought, wow, I never thought of that. That doesn't sound that red hot to me, but you know, I'll try it. They said you better, because the last job, the job you're doing now is going away. So I said, okay, I'll do it. So then I sold them for a while, and you get involved in finance peripherally with somebody, depending on who your customers are and things like that. But again, you learn to work on to think on your feet really good. And so I moved up the line at that, and then RCA went out of the computer business, and I decided I didn't want to live in Detroit and Lansing. So I took a job in Chicago, which I loved. I thought that was great. And I sold mini computers there. And then that company got swallowed up. And then I went to another company, which was in Washington, D.C., and I sold stuff to the federal government. And that's a whole different kettle of fish. It's totally different than doing it anywhere else. But the experience was incredible. And so then I went to New York for a little while, but I didn't stay long. And then they moved me to Los Angeles, and that was a lot of fun. I do this stuff for fun and money. You know, it's just
like we all do.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't know that they all do that. I think that they're not necessarily coupled, fun and money, but a lot of times they are. But you can make a lot of money and still have a crappy job. where you don't enjoy it. I insist on enjoying whatever I do, and if there's money there, I want that too. But so anyway, I moved up the line, and I lived at the beach in Los Angeles, which was really nice, and I learned to love that. And so I moved to I moved to software, big system software, which I didn't know anything about, and they taught me there. And then I ran a division of that company. It was a New York stock company, and I ran a big piece of their business. And that was the first exposure I really got, because I was running the whole division to finance. I learned it on the job, and any of the financial stuff, and any of the considerations of ownership and forecasting and basic stuff like that, I learned because they were going to take my teeth out if I didn't do it well, because I'd have an effect on the stock if I did a lousy job of forecasting. I mean, because the company would lose stock value, and so they don't like to do that much. And so I learned the discipline of finance, and I learned I learned how to be predictable in finance, because I would have got my head handed to me if I didn't do that. And a couple of times I wasn't able to do it because I was unaware of it, and I did have my head handed to me. So then I ran another company, and then I became a consultant for a while, and consulted with all kinds of different technology stuff, and M&A stuff and things like that. I got a lot of experience doing that. So it just came along and on the job training, basically. So I ran a large software company in Southern California, a very large software company, system software company, and I did that for 4 years, and I turned that around, and I turned the one in it was the public company around too. So I got a reputation that I could go in and turn things around. And I didn't really, frankly, it wasn't magic. It's just basic stuff, like I always figured when we were competing with other companies, we were actually fighting in a war, even though I had never fought in a war, but I knew that you needed people shooting bullets and you need people building bullets. And so I looked at how the companies, the two of them were put together, and the people that put them together in a funny way. There weren't many, the people shooting the bullets are the salesmen, and the people building the bullets are the developers who develop the products and extend the products. So if you don't have anybody doing those two things, or if you get more people watching the PX, like lawyers and administrators and all that stuff, you got more of those people who aren't bringing in revenues typically, and they're not basically building anything. You're in trouble. So I just rearranged the deck chairs, and all of a sudden both those companies became quite successful very quickly, because I got more people selling stuff, I got more people building stuff to sell against the competition. So that's what I use. I just used kind of a common sense that came out of trying to survive in that business. And so after a while, I was on a board of a company, a public software company in Chicago. I was still living in LA, and on the board was people from Morgan Stanley, and they came to me and said, "Hey, listen, why don't you quit that company in Los Angeles and come within our venture capital group, and we'll find a company for you to run, and we'll buy the company, and then you can run it, and then we'll at some point in time have a liquidity event, and you'll participate because you'll own a piece of the company." And I said, that sounds kind of good to me. It sounds like, but it didn't sound that good because I was doing well running this larger software company in LA. So I said, nah, I don't think so. I think it's going well there. I'm turning it around, and we're making money like crazy. And they said, listen, you're going to say that guy that runs that's the investor is going to fire you. He fires everybody. Well, guess what? I got fired 6 months later for not doing anything wrong. It's just that he wanted his company back. He said that he wanted it back.
Okay, Merritt, I'm going to have to hold you right there. We got to take a short break. We'll be back. We'll see about we'll see about this right after that.
Just give me a for the edit. Give me a. We'll be right back real fast.
And we'll be right back. We'll see about that after this message.
Give me one more time.
We'll be right back. We'll see about that right after this message.
All right, nicely done, gentlemen. Here we go for the second segment. This is going to be 12 minutes. Stand by.
Hello, Ron Save. Okay, we are back with Merritt Lutz. And Merritt, it seems like you were a self-made salesman. You shot from the cuff a lot. How did you manage to get in this position when you didn't have a degree at Michigan State in finance and you had a scholarship in music?
Well, I did have a scholarship in music, and I wasn't a music major either. So that's another one. But how did I do that? Well, if you assume that that there's a lot to learn, and you're learning from experts who are doing this stuff, and you're watching what they're doing, and you're watching how they predict things, and how they where they go for their money, and what they do, and the deals they put together. And I'm a pretty good observer, and I think it's possible for everybody to do it. I get that question all the time. How did you get into finance with one of the world's greatest firms in investment banks? And I said, I just learned on the way from experts who were doing this stuff, because I was in survival mode all the time. And so that's basically it. And then I said, so the Morgan Stanley was on the board of the company I was on in Chicago. And they said, come with us and we'll buy a company and we'll put you in as CEO. And then we'll have you be part owner of the company. So I said, yeah, that's cool. I could do that. And especially then when I got pushed out of the one in LA, I called Morgan Stanley. I said, is that job still open? The one that you said that I could come and work in your venture capital arm temporarily, like in a holding pen. And then we go off and make money together. And they said, yeah, come on. So a year later, they came to me. We didn't find the ideal company, but a year later, they came and said, we really like you. We'd like you to be a partner in Morgan Stanley. We'd like you to come to New York and run a division to build products and sell products to our big customers, software products. Mm-hmm. So I thought that's very cool. And now, so I went back to my wife, who was and I was in New York when they made that offer, because I had to come in periodically. So, and then I said to my wife, and we're sitting there, and remember, we lived at the beach. It was on the sand, and the water was right there, and it was a beautiful thing. And I thought to myself, if she balks just one little bit, I'm turning that job down. I just can't handle the stress on this thing.
Yeah.
So she said, and so I said, I got this great offer. I'd be a partner in the firm and managing director, and I'll run a big division that they're putting together for me, and so forth and so on. And so she said, what's the downside? I said, well, we have to move to New York. She said, yeah, let's get the hell out of here. I thought, you got to be kidding me. Is this some kind of spousal abuse? We're living at the beach, on the sand. I can see, there's no bugs here. There's no bad weather here, And I said, okay, we're doing it. So that's what happened. So we came here, and then I moved up, and I was here 26 years with Morgan Stanley. So I had a whole bunch of different jobs. And the one that was the most interesting, I had 1,000 programmers reporting to me. That was not a very interesting job. But I had other good, really interesting jobs. I did the programmer thing for 4 years, and then I ran what's called tech business development, whereas they spend a fortune on the technology of these big banks. They are technology organizations, and so you just they're trying to leverage the spend they have by looking for investments in these companies that supply them software and hardware. and they'll invest in these companies. And then by the very fact that a big prestigious bank like that is involved in it and financially involved in it, it attracts other customers. Okay. And then you end up being their banker. And so you make money in different ways about it. It's a fabulous business. It's a fantastic business. So I ended up getting in this group that would do risk management of the vendors, because and the impetus from that came from the Federal Reserve and other regulators that said you need to know your vendor and you need to know the financial aspects of the vendor. So I got put in charge of this group that did that. And as a result of that, when I saw really, really great opportunities, I take the opportunity to either the bankers or the venture capital people or the private equity people, all these that work at Morgan Stanley. So I became a funnel for which they would be able to look at qualified prospects for further investment in the thing. So I became very visible, and for a guy that never read a balance sheet,
Yeah.
And so I just learned it. I just learned it on the fly, man. It's either sink or swim.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You're on a number of you're on the advisory for a number of different boards, and you've offered a lot of specialized services, strategy, advisory services, risk management, cybersecurity, compliance, vendor management, technology-driven transformation. What do you think one of the more challenging companies that you tried to fix was? Can you give me an example of what that might be?
Well, I kind of alluded to it before. The two companies that I really helped to change for the positive and was really successful at it. The biggest problem was the way they had allocated their resources, their human resources. The humans, they didn't have enough of the people that brought in the bacon, and they didn't have enough people building the weapons. And once you get over that, I mean, you can feel yourself becoming more successful. And so I had to move people around the organization, and we didn't have major layoffs. We really didn't. We just changed the jobs to something else, and they were successful at it. So I don't know if that's a good answer for you, but that's the biggest problem that I saw. The spending was going to things that weren't worth spending money on. I mean, it just, so you just move the people to where they're most effective, and then you can afford more salesmen, more soldiers. You can afford more developers, more builders. It's just and the organization becomes much more effective. Now, the risk management stuff is really important, because I'll tell you why the regulators are really interested in vendor risk is because the bad guys are trying to break into all these companies to steal the money and do other things of harm. The bad guys in Eastern Europe and China, all over the
Hackers.
place.
You're talking about hacking pretty much, right?
Yeah, I am. Different, all this, the phishing that's going on, phishing, it's a huge issue, phishing, because they could break in and, they're telling you, hey, this is your boss calling you. The next time you pay this bill to this company, send it to this address, stuff like that. And you get that stuff all the time. I get it all the time at home. It's terrible. I don't know who to talk to in some of these situations. Well, it's happening all the time. And so you got to make sure that your vendors, you're protected. First of all, you got to make sure you're protected. You got all the security and everything else like this. But what about the people that sell you stuff? What about people that sell you services? These are smaller companies. They can't afford what the big companies can afford in terms of protection. So the bad guys know to go through the vendors. Okay? And the vendors, so we go back and say, you got to spend more on security. This kind of security, that kind of security, this kind of security, because you don't do well. Well, you can't afford to do that. Okay, why can't you afford? You've misallocated your resources. One of your resources you got to come to grips with is security, all kinds of security. So you got to first of all we got to test the companies to make sure that you know what kind of security they have. Now I didn't do that. That was another group that did that. But I did. My group was the group that did all the financial security stuff, and so we came up with a methodology uh, to do more than look at the balance sheet and more than just look at the profit and loss, because that just tells you what the condition of the company is at that point in time. What happens? Okay, you pass the company, you say they look pretty good, they're making some money, and so forth and so on. And a month later, they're in Chapter 11. Like, how does that happen? So it happens because what I did, there was a very, very large company which goes unnamed, but it was part of the AT&T system, and I did an evaluation of them. Me and my group did, primarily me, and we passed them because it was a multi-billion-dollar organization, and they had a lot of good partners and so forth and so on. And a month later, they were in Chapter 11. So we went and sat down with the people. I thought to myself, this is terrible. I'm so embarrassed. How could I see that? And because I was using the old logic that says too big to fail and all that crap, and so we sat down with one of the board members and said, how did this happen? Just help us. The guy said, well, it just happens. And we got bought by a private equity firm. And I said, yeah. And he said, they borrowed the money to buy us. And so we owed the money. They didn't owe the money. We owed the money. So we had to cut out a lot of costs, a lot of costs. And they put their people in control of the company. So they were just ripping out the costs like crazy. They fired a lot of developers, and they fired a lot of salespeople, and they fired all the people that I just told you were necessary. They got rid of them because all they were interested in is paying back the debt. They talk a good game, which is the good game they talk about is, like, hey, we're in the growth for you. Yeah, okay, if you do it yourself, but they got that debt. The debt drives them in this situation. So the guy said, so they wanted to refi the debt. And we said, we don't want to refi the debt. What we want to do is pay the debt off and get on to something else. We want to sell one of our divisions to pay one of that. Our most profitable division.
I'm going to hold you right there, Merritt. We got to take another quick break. We're going to be right back. We'll see about that after this quick message. Merritt, you want to continue with where you were?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I want to jump over to your stories, if we can. If you can kind of shut that down at that point, kind of tie that loose end up, and then we'll...
I'll tie it up. Okay.
All right, gentlemen, here we go for the segment 3. This is going to be the last one with the guests. This is 14 minutes with a quick branded feature at the top. And welcome back to We'll See About That with the legend, the champion, the MVP, Ron Say. I'm Mike Gary. This week in Dodger history presented by BFF Financial, 1967, Giants right-hander Juan Marichal ends his 29-day holdout when he becomes the third $100,000 major league pitcher in history, joining Dodger hurlers Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale. The Dominican dandy was also reported string training late last season, but proceeded to win his first 10 games en route to a 25-6 record.
Not a bad season. And you know what? I got to watch Juan Marichal pitch in my backyard in Tacoma, Washington, when they were the AAA affiliate in the Pacific Coast League of the San Francisco Giants. So I got to watch him for a brief time. I think he went 5-0, and before you know it, he was pitching in the big leagues. So congratulations, Juan. Classy guy. Got to play with him, actually. He was a Dodger in 1975 for a brief period. So, yeah, that was a fun experience. And of course, Sandy and Don, three top quality guys, all in the Hall of Fame. All right, Merritt, we're going to come back to you with that, end up with that company debt thing. Go ahead. You're on.
Okay, so what happened was, that I'll be very brief on this. What happened was the PE, the private equity firm that bought them, was driven by their own financial needs and not the company's needs. And so they took all the debt, they took all the costs out, and they had to be people that they really needed. And so therefore, the company tried to sell one of its divisions. They couldn't do it. So when they couldn't do it, they went to Chapter 11. And I said, and then when I left the meeting, I was with my assistant, and I said to her, this is just like this. Like, how many situations have we seen like this? This is a lot of them. So I said, wait a minute, I'm looking at the wrong stuff. I should start out these interviews like with who owns you. Who owns you? Is it a PE? Is it a venture capitalist? Is it a family? Is it a public? What is it? Because each one of those owners has a different level of priorities, and those priorities drive the activities and the behavior of the companies, which allowed me to be predictive. I could, and before nobody was doing it that way, and I don't know if they still are. I decide, and I came up with scenarios. This is owned by a PE. This one's owned by a VC. This one's owned by a family. I know how they'll act under certain circumstances. So you come up with scenarios, and you come up and say, I think this company's going to be in distress in 2 years. And you can do it. I don't need artificial intelligence because I'm that.
Okay.
I mean, it's if you got an experience, so that's it. So that's the end of that story. But so we redid all the way we looked at this stuff, and we did the I got a phone call. God damn it. So anyway, so we redid everything, and we based everything on the ownership, and we became extremely predictive, and we became the model of the industry, as I was told, for that kind of stuff. And Morgan Stanley had the best information in the world, and they knew who the good ones were and the bad ones. The good ones they invested in, and the bad ones they got rid of.
Well, it seems like to me that there's a lot of corporations out there that are probably indebted for you getting them turned around and straightened away. So I wanted to jump over here for a second. You got a number of stories to tell, and you got a couple baseball people. I know you're a baseball fan. I don't know when you had time to become a Dodger fan or a Yankee fan. I don't know which one you are yet today. You're living in New York, so you're probably a little bit of a Yankee fan. I know you are.
Yeah.
But anyway, you got a Gibson story, you got a Reggie Jackson story.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, I got a Ron Say story. So Ron and I met at a wedding, and we never met before, and this was in Nebraska, and we were at the banquet of the wedding party, and. So the bride, the mother of the bride, evidently knew Ron very well from school, and I didn't know she knew him, and she didn't know I knew anything about baseball, which I don't really. And so she brings this guy up to me, says, "I want to introduce you to somebody." And I looked at him. I said, "I know who you are." He said, "You do?" I said, "Yeah, you're Ron Say." He goes, "How do you know that?" I said, "I used to see you all the time. I had season tickets. I used to see you play all the time in that great infield." So we had a few drinks together, and that was the start of our relationship and a friendship. So it was kind of a good thing. I mean, it was really a fun thing. The Kurt Gibson story is I got to meet him in a different way. He went to Michigan State. He played football and baseball at Michigan State. He was a great football player too. And I never knew him. He's a lot younger than I am. So, but I'd always heard of him. And so I was a Dodger fan at that time when they went to the World Series. And when he hit that home run, remember the last of the ninth inning?
Yep.
Two out. Eckersley was pitching. Remember?
Yes, I do.
And he wasn't even in the dugout. He was so hurt from getting to the World Series that he didn't even sit in the dugout. He was sitting in the locker room, and so he came out and was painful. He could hardly walk. I remember that. And I was there. I was there at that race. I mean that game. I was there. It was terrific. Sitting up in the loge in the right field. and my wife was there. She was pregnant, and with my second son, and so I just and she wanted to go. I said, I'm not going. I said, yeah. She said, the guy can hardly walk, and everybody's leaving anyway, which where they were. You know how LA fans are. They're gone. They're on the freeway. And so anyway, so I said, I'm staying here. That's it. Well, I mean, you can see it on YouTube. That whole sequence is on YouTube about he hits the home run and they win the game. He never plays another at bat, and they win the World Series. And just like it's unbelievable. So I lived down at the beach at that time, and I was president of that company, that software company. And so the owner wanted to take me out to lunch. It's someplace down in Santa Monica on the water, and this was the next spring. The timing on this is the spring after that game. And so I'm sitting there and in this booth, and nobody's in the whole place because it's like 2 p.m. And so I see, and we're talking, having a business conversation. I see out of my peripheral vision in my left eye, I can see this guy being pushed in a wheelchair. I don't know who it is. I'm thinking that's interesting. He's the only guy in here, and it comes right in front of the booth, and I look in the wheelchair, and it's Gibson. And I said, "My God, it's Gibson! Oh my God, my hero!" I said, "My God, this is terrific." So I said, "Hey, Gibson, stop!" So he stops, and he looks at me. I said, "What do you want?" He was a little bit on the surly side, and I thought, well, I didn't expect that, but it's okay. And so I said, I just wanted to tell you, I was there for your home run. I was there. You said, yeah, and 250 million other people were there. They said they were there too. You too. I said, no, I was there. I was really there. I was in the loge. My wife was there with me. She's pregnant, blah, blah, blah. You went through it. I said, please believe me, I was there. He said, well, what do you want? I said, I just wanted to say that that's the biggest thrill I've ever had in sports, in any sport, anywhere. I'll remember that the rest of my life, and I just wanted to thank you. Then he goes, well, okay, you're welcome. And then he says, let's go. He says, the guy pushing the wheelchair. So I said, Jesus, this has not turned out the way I thought it was going to turn out. So I said, so he gets a couple feet away, and I said, Gibson. He said, what do you want now? I said, go green. The Michigan State colors. And he goes, stop. Push me back. He said, did you go there too? I said, yeah. I said, I used to see you. I used to see you play football. I said, I was in the stands. I said, but I was graduated, but you were terrific. I said, I was so thrilled to see you then. I was so thrilled to see you at the game. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He says, well, that's really nice. I'm so happy you said that. He said, you made my day, something like that. So I said goodbye, and he went away. I never saw him again. I guess he's doing work back there, but he now has Parkinson's, I think.
Yeah.
And I'd still love to see him again sometime, and tell him the story and see if it matches what he remembers, if anything,
Well, it turned out okay in the end.
Yeah.
Not always a great start, but it turned out in the end.
Absolutely. Merritt, we only got a couple minutes left, 3 minutes left here, and you've had great success, and you use that success to really pay it forward. You're a tremendous philanthropist. What are you working on right now with your philanthropy?
Okay, my son is autistic. My first son is autistic, and he was with a place called the Devereux Foundation. And I just recently chased Wynton Marsalis down, the famous trumpet player, and he just plays right up the street from me here in Manhattan. And so I got him, and he has an autistic brother, and I said, would you play at my apartment? And we'll put together something, and we'll raise some money for music therapy. And he did it. He was wonderful. He brought a trio with him. And we had 50 people here in my apartment, and he played for an hour and 50 minutes or something like that. We raised $120,000 for music therapy. So that's a big one. I'm really thrilled with that one. I've been doing that for a long time, because music therapy, if you don't know what it is a way that the people get degrees in music therapy. They get doctorates, they get master's degrees, whatever, and they work with autistic and other brain damaged people. And they they try to bring them back. I mean, this changes their lives, and whether they love it so much that you can see the difference. It's just a really pleasant thing. The other thing is that my university's Michigan State's Wind Ensemble Wind Symphony is coming to Carnegie Hall, so I'm raising money to get them here to fly them here and to feed them here and to put them in a room here. So I'm doing that right now. I think that's a big one. But those two things are my passion. I raise money for. I was a drummer. I was on drum scholarship, and I raised money for the drumline. I help recruit for them, and stuff like that. So I get really, really involved in it. So those are the two things I raise money for, essentially.
Well, I want to thank you. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there in the corporate world want to thank you for helping get their situations straightened away in the world of finance, and also for your charity work. All very good stuff that you're doing. Merritt, thank you so much for being a part of our show today. Wish you the best of health and luck, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Merritt Lutz, there you go. And then there we have it. We'll see about that. We'll be right back with this after this message. Still there?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Merritt.
Yeah, that was great, Merritt.
Do you really think so, guys? I just.
Oh no. You. Yeah. It was fine. Obviously we can't touch everything that we would like to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very interesting work. Obviously, we could talk days about how you went about fixing this and that and whatever, but. And the other work that you do as well. So yeah, it went. You did great. You took
very
the
well.
stories and you explained things well, and
I'd love to have you back. And real fast, Merritt, AI bubble or no bubble?
I think that's going to change the face of the earth. I think it's dangerous. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. But the good guys are working on it. It's going to change business. It's going to cause unemployment. But that's the way it goes. You can't stop it. And the thing is, the bad guys are working with it too.
Yeah.
Like these guys in the phishing I mentioned to you.
Yeah.
These guys that call you on the phone and they pretend to be somebody else, or they send you email and saying that they're gonna sue you and all this stuff. That's all phony stuff. They got the AI too.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's scary for, I think, me in particular, at this age. The technology of it, the vast ability that they have to disrupt things. It's just real scary. You talk
I think
about
the world's going to be totally different in 20 years, maybe even less than that. I mean, because of the AI stuff. I get all these calls all the time now. But this guy calls me and says, "I'm with an AI company now. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm doing this." I think to myself, man, 2 or 3 years ago, that never happened. Never. I remember AI and expert systems aren't new. I remember when I was running informatics in Southern California, we found there was a UCLA professor down near the LAX, and he was building these expert systems with artificial intelligence, and you should have seen the hardware. The hardware was the size of my living room, these huge machines, and I said, you mean if I'm going to do this, I have to have one of these machines? And he said, "Oh yeah, everybody will be buying them." I said, "I don't think so. But so when the machines became small and fast and cheap, guess what? AI showed up.
Yeah. Well, it is scary for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Merritt. Be well. Have a good day. Is it raining in New York?
No, it's nice. The sun's out, and I'll show it to you. You want to see it?
Yeah, it's opening day.
Yeah, the Yankees are winning, Merritt.
I'll show you. Hold on just a second.
You got a leadoff home run in the first inning.
There it is.
What a view.
There you go.
What a beautiful view.
Yeah. So anyway, so who's winning? Who's winning the Yankees game?
It's 2-1 in the, what does it say there? Sixth inning?
Yeah, 2-1, top of the sixth. Aaron Judge led off first.
Austin Wells.
Yeah, Austin Wells led off for the home run for the Yankees. So I think it's a good indication of the season to come.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know because people around here say they got everybody's injured and not coming back and all this stuff. They're really concerned about it.
Well, they I know in spring training they lost 2 of their starting pitchers, so that wasn't helpful. But
say, I got to tell you, could I tell you guys? I know you got to go, but about the Reggie Jackson story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I got a really good buddy of mine that was a very close buddy of mine who's a car nut. He owns 40, 50 cars, so really rare stuff. And so and that Pebble Beach has that Concours d'Elegance, the car show, and he's won that a couple of times. So I go there every year to see that, and he shows cars. So the one time I go, this is probably, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. So I was there, and my wife's with me, and so we're looking around at all the different cars and everything. So I said, I'm going to go back to see where John's, he's back with his cars. I'm going to say hello. So as I walk back there, and he's right on the 18th green. I have all these beautiful cars and everything like this. There's this guy standing there, and he said, and I go up to him and I said, "Oh my God, you're Reggie Jackson." And he's standing talking to my buddy John, and he said, "Yeah, He said, "How did you know?" He said, "What do you mean? How did I know?" He said, "Well, I've been trying to be undercover here. I don't want to be known and people coming up to me and asking me stuff and my autograph and so I was hoping to be undercover here." And I said, "Well, how I knew was you had the Yankee hat on. You got a shirt on that says Hall of Fame, and you look like Reggie Jackson." So I kind of put those together, and I'm pretty clairvoyant on these things, you know.
Yeah, I'm surprised at Reggie for saying something like that because all he wanted to do is be in front of the camera. Yeah.
So he said, so he looks at the cars and he said, I live right above here. And I said, "Yeah, do you?" He said, "Yeah, come on up to my place." So he says, me and John go up to his place, and it's beautiful. It's right above the bay there, above Pebble Beach, and so he shows us some of the cars and so forth and so on. And I said, "I know, Reggie, I noticed that you live, the street you live on." He says, "Yeah." He says, "Valenzuela Drive." I said, "There's something really ironic about that you live on Valenzuela Drive." He looked at me, he said, "Yeah, but I sure kicked his ass in the World Series." I don't remember that, but
he may have been referring to the Dodgers, probably not.
No, he did. He was referring to the Dodgers. Valenzuela, one of the World Series games.
Yeah, well, he never faced Valenzuela. The game,
didn't he? He maintained he did.
Well, he as a matter of fact, Nettles and Reggie did not play in Game 3 in 1981, which was Fernando's game.
Did he win that game?
No, I won that game.
Sure did.
No, I know that, but I mean, you know what I mean.
No, but it was me.
You walked it off, right?
No, that was against Cat. Well, no, that was another game in the World Series that was mine. But this Game 3 in 81 was really my game. We won. Fernando pitched a complete game. He walked like 7 guys, gave up 9 hits and 5 runs. It was a horrible outing, but somehow we managed to hold on and win.
Wow.
But that was my game, and Reggie was not playing in that game, and neither was Greg. Greg had a thumb injury or finger injury or something that happened the day before. But I don't recall Fernando pitching after that. If there was, I'd have to look it up. But that was the only time that he would have faced Fernando in the World Series.
Yeah.
So, but yes, he did have great success against us. Yeah.
Then he said to John and I, "Why don't you come down to my garage?" So he had a garage in Monterey where he has muscle cars. So he's got Cobras and Vets and all that stuff. And so they were he's got like 4 or 5 full-time. He had 4 or 5 full-time mechanics, and then he has a memorabilia shop there. So he says, "Come on over here, Merritt." He took me in the shop, And he said, "What do you want?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Pick anything you want." So I picked a ball and a shirt and he signed the shirt to Jason, my son.
Cool.
And he put Hall of Fame on it.
That's great.
Yep. So it was really something. Then and then back here at the car show, 2 years later, I went to a dinner, and they put me right next to him. I had dinner with him. Boy, he hated Steinbrenner. I'll tell you that. Oh my God.
Well, Dave Winfield didn't get along with him either very well. Yeah.
No, that's for sure.
George
didn't he have Winfield? He had Winfield followed. Didn't
he put him under surveillance, right?
Yeah. They did not get along. Well, actually, it might have been worse for Winfield than it was for Reggie.
Yeah.
As far as I can remember, but yeah, they.
Well, Reggie was wincing because Steinbrenner threw him off the players' bus. Remember that?
Well, all I remember is that Nettles had problems with Reggie, and Mickey Rivers had problems with Reggie, and Thurman Munson,
Billy
Martin had trouble with Reggie, and Winfield got one hit in the '81 World Series, so Steinbrenner wasn't real happy with him and his performance. But I remember Thurman Munson going to Reggie after he wrote a book, and Reggie had claimed that he had been misquoted. And Thurman said, "Misquoted? For 500 words you were misquoted?" Yeah,
I think that's funny.
They were very dysfunctional, and Reggie came from Oakland too. That was also very dysfunctional. So look, I tease Reggie because Reggie is the all-time major league record holder for strikeouts in a career. He struck out 2,700 times.
Oh,
that's the equivalent of 5+ seasons striking out every game, every at bat of every game. And so
my God,
I teased him about that too. I said, you struck out every time, every at bat of every game, the equivalent of 5 years. I'm sure he's done the math, but it's followed him around. He loves to be in front of the camera, no question about it. Yeah.
Well, when he said, "I'm trying to be,"
oh no, I understand. Yeah.
That was so funny because he had all this stuff on. Hey.
Yeah. Who am I? Yeah. Who am I? Yeah. You got a candy bar too, by the way. Yeah.
I met Tommy once.
Tommy was he was big in New York. He was big in Chicago. He was big in L.A. He knew where all the best Italian restaurants were, and ate for free.
Yeah, I used to go to that one that he had that restaurant down near San Pedro, didn't he?
If he had it, it was in by name.
Okay.
I don't think he invested into anything like that.
No, okay.
Yeah.
But I went up to him. He was in a bar somewhere in Chicago, and I said, "Hi," and I had a buddy with me, and I said, "Hi, I don't know you, but I think I met you once before." And I said, He said, "Well, how do I know you?" I said, "I'm a season ticket holder."
Yeah.
As if that was important. He says, "Shit."
Well, you know what, Tommy really loved his position. He liked being the ambassador of baseball.
Yeah.
The Dodger ambassador locally. He took it and ran with it. And there were times when we would be doing our work at the stadium, and when Tommy would come in, he would kind of systematically just kind of take over, and we knew then that he was going to step in and entertain the people. So we let him do his thing, and I'll tell you a quick story. A lot of times you get asked to sign stuff at the stadium, and of course, with me being there as much as I was, working there for 25 years after the fact, people stop you and say, "Hey, would you sign my baseball, please, on the sweet spot?" "Sure, let me sign it." And little did they know later on they might be running into Lasorda. So that the sweet spot for a baseball is relegated for the manager, especially a team ball. So when somebody would take that same ball up to him and ask him, he said, Mr. Lasorda, would you please sign my baseball? And he'd see my name on the sweet spot, and he'd get upset. He'd say, Penguin. He says, "What when did you manage? You're not supposed to be signing on the sweet spot." And I said, Tom, they saw me first. They asked me to sign on the sweet spot, and I signed on the sweet spot. They didn't know they were going to run into you. And he says, well, you should know better. You know. I said, look, Tom, you can bitch and moan about it as much as you want, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm one of those guys who got you into the Hall of Fame. So I'll sign that fucking baseball wherever I want to. And that's kind of how we got along. I always wanted to give him some levity, because once he took over as manager, things changed. He couldn't spend as much time with his guys, of which I was, along with the others. We had a core group, and we spent a lot of time together in the minor leagues and off the field as well. And we knew that the demands for him and our time were going to be cut once he became manager. And and then of course his popularity grew, our success grew. We were going to the World Series three times out of 5 years on bookends. And there was a tremendous amount of success and a demand for his time. So we didn't get to spend that time that we used to, as it turned out later on. So yeah, he got into it a little bit, sometimes too much, and tried to make him realize that don't let that head get too big.
Yeah.
Remember who we are too, and you know what? Some of those little nuanced sayings that I would remind him of, kind of where he came from and who we are as a group. He started to adhere to that. He started saying, and here's my guys who helped me, get to the Hall of Fame, which he didn't do before. So in an indirect way, I think it made him see things a little bit differently.
Wow. Can I tell you one more story, totally unrelated to baseball? It's one of my favorites. Do you guys know who Jackie Stewart is?
Sure. Race car driver. I saw the movie. I saw the movie. That was a great movie, by the way.
Yeah, he's wonderful. I mean, but anyway, so years and years ago, I lived in D.C. And so I was a Formula One fan since the 60s. And so, and the Formula One race used to be at Watkins Glen up in upstate New York. So I was running an office in D.C. And so I one of the guys there said, I never been to one of those races. I said, well, let's get the wives. We'll get an RV and we'll go up there and we'll go, well, what's the race up there? In Watkins Glen. He says, great. So we did that. We just had a long drive, and so on Friday morning, we got up there on Thursday. On Friday morning, I said to him, I said, Harry, let's go for a walk. Bring your camera. It's early, and nobody's going to be up really, but let's just walk around the track. And so we go walking around the track, and we get to a certain place, and I see Jackie Stewart. He's got that little hat that he wears, and I see he's right there, and I think he was still racing at the time. So I said, Harry, that's Jackie Stewart. And Harry, of course, didn't have a clue at who Jackie Stewart was. And so I yelled at him, Jackie, hey, Jackie, hey. And he turns around, and he looks at me, and he doesn't know whether to wave or not. He doesn't know who I am, So he goes, yeah. So I go up there, and I grab him, and I said, Harry, take the picture of me and Jackie. Take our picture. So Harry takes the picture, and I got my arm around Jackie, or